Hey friends, here's a rebroadcast of an earlier conversation that I think you'll enjoy. I wanted to be sure that you had something worth your listening time while I take a few weeks to rest and restore by stepping away from the digital world. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AccuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit AccuFastNeedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Deborah Woolf, welcome to Qiological.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Michael.
I always enjoy having a little cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever with friends that are living across the pond somewhere. I mean, it's fun to talk to people down the street, but, we have the magic of the internet, so we can talk to pretty much anybody anywhere. That's what we're doing today. And today, I want to talk to you about something in Chinese medicine that always seems super esoteric, I could never wrap my brain around it. I've talked to other people about it. I still have trouble wrapping my brain around it. Stems and branches.
Scary stuff.
Is it scary to you?
No, I think it's
No.
fascinating.
You think
Absolutely
it's
fascinating.
fascinating?
Yeah, I
Oh,
do.
great. That's why I'm talking to you today. So I often ask people how they found their way to Chinese medicine school. I mean, I'm kind of interested in that, but more to the point, and the thing I'm super curious about is what drew you to the whole stems and branches thing?
Oh, well, it was a total accident, or rather synchronicity, let's say.
Synchronicity. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Tell
So,
us about the synchronicity.
yeah, and one of those things, time came around again, and I knew that I had to go and study acupuncture. And what did I do? I went to the nearest place, and it happens to be the oldest acupuncture college in Britain that specialises in stems and branches. And I knew nothing about it.
How did you know that you needed to study Chinese medicine?
Well, I think it's probably that typical story. I wasn't very well. I was brought up very scientifically. I thought acupuncture was a load of poo. Eventually, I went to an acupuncturist. They sorted me out. I had this crazy experience while I was feeling very negative about it. Like, I wish he'd just get on with it. Why does he keep asking me all these stupid questions that haven't got anything to do with my problem? Classic.
Classic.
Why am I here? Why am I paying this guy money? This is not getting me
Right.
anywhere.
Shut the hell up and let's get to the needles.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
then
Heck
he
this shit.
put the needle in, and I had this really weird sensation that went all the way up my arm and across my shoulder to the front of my face to the other side of my nose. And I must have made some kind of weird twitch or something because the acupuncturist said, "Well, what happened there?" And I said, "Oh, I've had this really weird sensation." And I showed him where it had gone. And he turned round and he pointed to his chart. And I described the whole of the colon meridian. At the time, obviously, I didn't know it was the colon meridian. So I thought, hey, there is something to this. And then he sorted me out.
That changed your mind, didn't it?
I loved the way he was in himself. That was the main thing. I just thought, wow, there's something about this guy. I'm not in love with him. I don't think he's special, but I like the way he is in himself. And there's something there. I want to know. I want to learn this. And then I waited 10 years and then off I went to the nearest acupuncture college.
Which just happened to have a thing for stems and branches. How did your school tend to have this thing for stems and branches? I mean, is there a backstory to that? Was there somebody there
Yeah.
who just kind of knew it? Or yeah, okay.
Yeah,
What's
so I don't know what you know about the history of acupuncture schools in Britain. Maybe not very
not
much.
much other than Jared Worsley had a place at Leamington Spa,
Yeah.
and there's supposedly a lot of alternative medicine people happening in Brighton. And there's a really good guy who can fix my WordPress stuff, but he lives outside of London. That's all I know.
So my first experience of acupuncture was in Leamington Spa because I happened to be at university there. So I was actually treated by a Worsley practitioner in the place where they were in this industrial unit near the station. It was really hidden and quite quiet and in the middle of sort of like you wouldn't expect an acupuncture college there. And I think that was before Worsley went to the States. So J.R. Worsley trained along with the founder of our college at the same time with the same teacher. And English acupuncture comes from French acupuncture, actually. So we all follow the Vietnamese stroke French tradition.
Wait a minute. Your teacher was like classmates with J.R. Worsley.
Correct. There was maybe 3 in the class.
Okay. To me, this is interesting because I'm not a five element dude. I mean, I don't know a lot about that tradition other than like trying to figure out J.R. Worsley's backstory is almost impenetrable. I mean, there's a whole book that's been written about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. In the footsteps of the Yellow Emperor. Is that what you're talking
Yes,
about?
yes, yeah,
Very
yeah. Peter
interesting.
Ekman's book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really interesting.
yeah. What's your teacher's name?
The founder of our college was Dr. Van Buren. He was a Dutch guy who was born in, I don't know, maybe Indonesia or something, and had a very esoteric upbringing. And then he was a prisoner of war in Japan, and then he was a naturopath, and then he studied acupuncture after that.
Interesting. Okay. So your stuff kind of comes from the French tradition.
As does Worsley's.
As does Worsley's.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
you see, that's part of the problem for me, is that because the moment I started studying, I realized that all our stuff had been translated through lots of different languages. I live in England, but actually my mum's Italian, so I've always spoken more than 2 languages, and I've done a lot of translating and interpreting, and so I was quite horrified at the idea that there were all these terms, and people use different terms, but were they the same characters? And, was it mistranslated because people didn't know anything about acupuncture and, all this stuff. So we got classical Chinese translated through Vietnam or France, then to English. What a nightmare.
Right, and not only translated, in terms of words, but you're translating through culture, through time, through a person's perspective. Were they a missionary? Were they a business
Exactly. They
person?
didn't know anything about it.
It can be so tricky going through culture, language, a person's ability to translate in the first place, and then you've just got time and space. I mean, Chinese people in the Han Dynasty, Chinese people in the Song Dynasty. I mean, what does a Song Dynasty person really understand about a Han Dynasty person?
Probably nothing, I
No,
suspect.
probably not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we have this tradition that has come down through all these different influences, and we think we know what we're talking about.
No, we haven't got a clue.
I mean, how do you puzzle this stuff out? You speak several languages. I know you speak some Chinese. We've written a little back and forth in Chinese. So you might even speak a lot of Chinese. How much Chinese do you speak?
I don't speak a lot, but I read and write in classical
Yeah.
Chinese.
Great.
Yeah, my
Okay.
spoken Chinese is not very good. It's hard.
Yeah, mine. It is hard. Reading's easier because you have time to like puzzle stuff through.
Yeah, and also I haven't really got, I haven't got enough time in my life, so, I speak a few languages, and really I'm just interested in being able to read the texts.
Yes. Yes. So how do you puzzle out what's relevant and useful?
Well, I have this theory. Studying Chinese medicine for me has become much clearer by understanding that it's number based. The more we understand about numbers, the more we understand Chinese medicine.
Uh-oh. Does this mean I have to know how to do like, calculus and all that
No,
stuff?
no, no rubbish. None of that. Just normal numbers. Only the numbers 1 to 9 is plenty.
All right, I'm in.
You're in. Hooray!
Yeah. So the numbers 1 to 9, this relates to stems and branches, yes?
Absolutely. You know that there are 10 stems and 12 branches, which is basically 5 and 6.
Mhm. I've heard, well, like 5 phases,
Yes.
6 conformations or levels or,
Yeah.
whatever
Jing,
you wanna call
divisions,
it.
whatever
Jing.
you wanna
Yeah,
call them.
yeah, the old Jing, yeah, these days I just wanna say 6 Jing because that is so hard to translate.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's another one where people translate it so many different ways, and then you never know what you're talking about.
Or we'll argue over how we're translating it. Instead of just going, "Oh, it refers to this thing or this process," we get hung up on, "No, it's a level," or, "No, it's, whatever, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah. Yeah, and something that doesn't get talked about very much either, does it? We spend a lot of time talking about it at my college.
And when you talk about it, what are you talking about? Like, clue us in on that conversation.
Well, we're talking about the connections between 5 and 6.
In my initial training, I can't say about how my teachers understood it because, as a student, there's a bunch of stuff that you're not gonna understand probably for 10 years. But I remember studying 5 phases and the 6 Jing, and it's like, okay, I can kinda look at the world through the 5 phases, or I can kinda look at the world through the 6 Jing, but, like, putting them together, I couldn't figure out how to squish them together.
Mm.
Have you got some insight on that?
I mean, there's lots of different ways of looking at it. One of the ways that you can look at it is that 5 or 10 relates to things that are in heaven, and 6 or 12 relates to things that are on earth. So 5 has got a lot more to do with, or 10 has got a lot more to do with space, and 12 or 6 has got a lot more to do with time. And we can think about the way that we move from 5 to 6 or 10 to 12, which is that story about when you're in the womb and you're still in heaven then, and you've only got 10 Zhang Fu organs. And you don't actually have a Jingluo system. You don't actually have a meridian system at all until you're born. It doesn't start until you have your first breath and your first suckle. And that moment is the moment when suddenly, if you look at Western medicine, when you're in the womb, you have an oxygenated blood system as an embryo because you can't breathe. So there's red blood that is going through your body coming from your mother. But the moment you're born, you have to breathe. And so suddenly you need to have a place for non-oxygenated blood and oxygenated blood. And so that means that your heart is divided into two. And that's when the septum closes. That's the way they call it in Western medicine. And in that moment, that's when fire, the element fire, or the phase fire, becomes two. Emperor fire, which is the heavenly one, and minister fire, which is the earthly one.
This is a piece of Western physiology that I was not aware of. I mean, I see what you're saying. The heart is an embryo or is a fetus. You're not breathing oxygen. You're just taking that in from your mother. But as soon as you have to breathe, the heart goes through this profound physiological change. It divides itself in two.
Yes, that's right.
Bang.
You've got,
it just comes right on.
Yeah. There's one bit, once you're born, you've got one bit that is related to the lungs. So it's bringing oxygen into the blood. And then there's another bit that is to do with pumping it round and then bringing the stuff that is now had its oxygen removed back up to the lungs. So you've got like a blue bit and a red bit, if you want,
right,
in simple terms.
So the heart transforms instantaneously in that moment of birth.
That's when the septum closes. Yeah. And you have, for instance, children who have heart defects where the hole doesn't shut. And so they've got tarnished blood, for instance, because it can't stay in the right way, if you see what I mean.
And this is where we get minister and imperial fire. This is another one of those areas, ministerial, imperial fire. I mean, I've heard the terms tossed about for years. I know it's important because people talk about it a lot throughout history. And yet I'm kind of sitting here going, I don't really get it. I mean, if I had to explain it to my 14-year-old niece, I'd be at a loss.
So, this is the moment where your 10 becomes your 12, because that's when you add on Shinbao, Shinju, what you might call the pericardium, and Sanjiao, which are two organs with a name but no form. They're actually minister fire. They're the things that allow your maintenance rather than your creation. They're to do with becoming 12 rather than being 10. They're not actually real organs, are they?
Well, they're functions.
Exactly.
There's a case to be made that there is indeed a sort of fibrous bag around the heart that we could call pericardium. And lately, they've even found something in the connective tissue they call the interstitium.
Yes, and I agree. That's a very interesting area. I agree. But I don't think that's what they were talking about.
Yeah. What do you think they were talking about?
I know that we can make, oh God, let's not get into that story of trying to sort of put Western thinking onto Chinese thinking. I think that is a problem. But I know, for instance, in the Hara Diagnosis book by Stephen Birch and Kiko Matsumoto, they make a really good case for Sanjiao being the membranes and the connective tissue. And that makes a lot of sense to me. It really does. I can relate to that. But these are still things that are not functioning until after you're born. So you still have this functional aspect. And it's to do with our maintenance, the fire of our maintenance rather than the fire of our creation. It's very different to the fire of the heart. The fire of the heart is a heavenly fire. It's our Shen. It's not something that is ours, if you see what I mean.
Ooh. Now that's a provocative thought, that our Shen is not ours.
It's heavenly. It descends, it comes into the embryo at the 3rd month. That's what the quickening's about.
Okay, quickening.
Quickening is when you really do feel that something is going on. If you're pregnant, it's only after 3 months that the embryo is seriously established, that you can start to feel something happening. Before then, really in Chinese embryological thought, ancient Chinese embryological thought, you weren't really pregnant. You didn't really have a baby as such.
Mm-hmm. Until that 3 months. I know certainly here in the West, that first 3 months, I find women are generally quite reluctant to say too much about being pregnant until that first 3 months has passed. At
Yeah.
least I've seen that with my patients.
Yeah, until around about 12, 13 weeks, you don't really feel it's well established. And, you're going through this roller coaster, hormones all over the place, you're feeling tired, you're feeling sick, you don't know what's going on. And then suddenly, poof, things change and you're like, oh my God, I am actually pregnant. So there's this thing about three, this three thing. That's why we have 3 Hun, for instance. Talking about numbers, of course. Because 3 Hun, again, we've got that thing, it's like traditionally it was on when the baby was 3 days old or 3 months old, then the father would look them in the eyes, look at their Hun, and then they'd give them the name. So again, you've got this 3 thing, which is, the Hun is just an expression of the Shen. It's your physical expression, or your not even physical, but spiritual expression of the Shen, your individualized Shen, if you want.
Mm-hmm. So there's an aspect of Shen that comes in, it's not ours, is the aspect of Shen that is, I guess we could call it us.
Yeah.
And then what's the third? You said that there's 3.
3 Hun.
Oh, 3 Hun.
Yeah,
I thought there
one
was just
Shen.
1 Hun.
No, it's 3. 3 Hun and 7 Po. That makes 10.
Oh my.
That makes 10.
Oh. Okay. All right. Okay. I can see we're going to have a lot of fun with numbers here. All right. I'm going to express my ignorance because I thought there was 1 Hun and 1 Po. And now I'm hearing that there's 3 Hun and 7 Po.
Yeah. 3
Okay.
Hun, which is to do with heaven, earth, and man. And they live in the 3 Jiaos, San Jiao.
So each Jiao has its own Hun,
It does.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So the Hun of the upper Jiao would be the Shen.
Mm-mm.
Is that correct? No, I'm off track here.
No, all 3 Hun are like an expression of the Shen. They're like our individualized Shen. This is that idea of 3 is 1, which you also see in the body, for instance, with Du Mai, Ren Mai, and Chong Mai.
Mm-hmm. Well, you see it in a lot of religions as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
I was going to avoid that because, religion, I'm not very good at that.
Well, I had an experience recently. I took an individual meditation and solitude retreat, and I did it at a Franciscan retreat center.
Wow.
Yeah. And, they got crosses all over the place.
Well,
because there's a
yeah.
Franciscan, right? Which is a little creepy to me sometimes because I grew up Jewish. So it's always like a little weird. But, and then they got, Jesus hanging on the cross. But I'm away on a little meditation retreat here. And I look at it early on in my time there, and I look at it and I go, oh, look at that. There's a vertical line, that's heaven. There's a horizontal line, there's earth. And what's in the middle? Ren. It's like, it's right there in the Christian mythology. It's just plain as the nose on your face, right?
5.
5. Uh-oh.
Warning.
Okay,
5.
wait a minute. Warning. Okay, we're coming up to 5. I want to hear about 5 in a moment. Have you watched Umbrella Academy?
Well, I did. And that number 5, he's the only one that doesn't have a name.
And what does he move through?
Time and space. It's fantastic. But what about 6? What about 6, huh?
Wait a minute. Which one's number 6?
Yeah, I don't know. But, there's
Who's
something
6?
missing.
Wait, I forget who 6 is.
Maybe he's the dead one.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary. Raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, Suggesting a payment plan or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Oh man, I'm going to have to go back and watch it. Anyway, number 5 is quite a character.
Yes.
So, all right, we're all over the place. I'm hoping we're going to tie this together, but stems and branches.
It's always all over the place.
There's always all over the place. All right, well, I'm good for it. I want to come back to 3 Hun and 7 Po in a moment, but you just said number 5. I'm talking about heaven, earth in person. We're talking about Jesus on a cross, and you go number 5. Where's that number 5 come from? Now, what are we looking at?
Okay, now you talked about vertical and horizontal. So one way we can look at this is that the vertical axis is our creation. That's to do with fire and water, Shen and Jing, heaven and earth.
Oh, heart and kidney.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And what's the horizontal axis? That's where we live. That's our created world. That's like sunrise and sunset, wood and metal, Hun and Po, as two balances of the two sides of the balance of the, that kind of thing. I can't think of the word. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's the daily cycle, basically. The
Yeah.
sunrise, the sunset, the spring equinox, the fall equinox.
Rising up, pushing down. They're always trying to balance each other out. And so what happens when you have a vertical axis and a horizontal axis? That's 5 because there's the center.
Okay. And each of the axes have an up and a down. There's a dynamic movement between them.
Well, yeah, but there's a difference between the movement between heaven and earth or fire and water, Shen and Jing, to the movement between wood and metal or east and west or sunrise or sunset or Hun and Po. Because we're changing from creation to created.
Now it's starting to get weird. I'm going to circle back to this in a moment. I've got a feeling we might kind of go all over the place here, but hopefully we'll tidy it up in a way that will be satisfying by the end of the discussion.
Oh, Michael, I really hope we can manage that, but I doubt it.
Okay, well, all right. Y'all are warned. We may not get there, but I'm doing my best, okay? So I want to come back to the 3 Hun and 7 Po for a moment. And again, I think we're probably going to step in different parts of the conversation. Hopefully they will come together in some way that's satisfying. Tell me more about the 3 Hun. I've got this idea. There's this one Hun. It's located in the liver. That's my basic level of understanding. Help me get from that 1 to the 3 so I can grasp that one.
Because the Hun are an expression of the Shen. The Shen isn't ours. It's heavenly. Everything that is expressed in our body, it can't be just a unity. It has to be expressed in something more than one. That's why we have yin yang. That's why we have heaven, earth, and man, or heaven, man, and earth. That's why we have qi. Qi is actually to do with 3. It's the interaction between yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why we have Sanjiao. Sanjiao is in 3 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Hun is an expression. It's wanting to be like the Shen. It's expressing the Shen in our bodies.
On the individual level.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the expression of Shen on the individual physical and psychoemotive levels.
Yeah. Or even just emotional, psycho, whatever level. It can only be 3. It can only be the first possible expression of 1, which is 3. Just like heaven, earth, and man, or Ren Mai, Du Mai, Chong Mai. It's that first stopping point. We're moving towards things that are more physical. Things are more physical when we get to 5 or 6. We haven't got to more physical yet, so we have to get to 3.
Okay. And the 3 is where you've got something, you've got the counter to something, and then the relation between them.
Yeah, that's right. And if you really wanted to get into number stuff, then you could also, for instance, talk about the wtih. Do you know about the wtih? It's the one that's, there were 2 different maps that were found that are supposed to be very ancient. One is the luoshu and the other one's the wtih. And one was found on the back of the tortoise by the great Yu. And the other one came on the dragon horse. And I think it was Fuxi who saw it.
Not familiar with these at all.
They're cosmological maps of the universe. And when you look at the wtih, which is the one that was on the back of a dragon horse, I'm not entirely sure what a dragon horse is, to be honest. They have number relationships. And what they're describing is the vertical axis, the horizontal axis, and then coming to the center. And they have numbers to do that. So it starts in the north, in the bottom, and then it goes up to the south at the top. So that's number 1 and number 2. So that's the vertical axis, creation.
Yep.
And then it goes to
there's your fire, water.
exactly.
Right?
And then it goes to the horizontal axis. And then number 3 is wood. And number 4 is metal. And then it comes back to the center. And guess what that number is?
Mr. 5.
Yeah, you got it. So you could also say that that's one of the reasons why we have 3 related to Hun and wood. And, that it's the third movement. If you want, you do start in the north, then you join up with the south. So you've got the creative axis, and then you start doing the created axis, and you start in wood, and then you go to metal, and then you complete in the middle, in the center. Yeah.
That makes so much sense. So wood is the beginning of the creative aspect.
Yeah.
The manifest
created,
material.
The created. Yeah. And wood is springtime. Wood is beginnings. It's visible beginnings rather than hidden beginnings, because actually hidden beginnings is in the north in wintertime. That's number 1.
Right. Which is when Chinese have the Spring Festival, right?
No.
Or the New Year.
No, no.
Isn't it in the middle of winter? It's like the middle.
No,
It's like
winter solstice is not the same as Spring Festival. Spring Festival,
no, I get that. Yes,
it's different.
It's okay. So let me be a little bit more clear. Winter solstice, right? It's not the same. It's a little past winter solstice when you still cannot see it. Any person living in a northern part of the hemisphere, where you get winter, at the end of January, early February, you're going to look outside and go, I don't see any signs of spring whatsoever. But like you were just saying, deep where it's still unseen.
Yeah.
The influence has already turned. It is not yet manifest, but it's on the way.
It's almost there though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's almost coming out at Spring Festival, while winter solstice is the deep hidden beginning, which is to do with water.
Mm-hmm. But I think for me, it's emblematic that by the time something arises and becomes manifest, I mean, when you first start to see it, that's not when it began. It began a while back, and it was still very, very unseen.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So wood, number 3, Hun, and lots to do with 3. It's a 3ing thing.
Yeah, which is all over the place, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
And it's the first expression of 1. We 3 are 1 is a really common thing,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got this 3, which is 1, and then we move into 4.
Yeah, 4 seasons, 4 directions. But 4 is already almost immediately 5, because you can't have 4 without having the center.
Mm-hmm. I mean, 4 implies the center. I mean, that comes into the 5 comes into being as soon as you've got the 4.
Yes, that's right. And that's why you have those maps where sometimes, the cosmological ones, they're like a cross. And then it's only later on that becomes like that 5 phases thing where it's in a sort of circular sequence.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of people will take that earth element and put it smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, it really helps.
So we still have that sort of cosmic cross.
It's very useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 7 Po.
So, spring, wood, Hun, it's all rising. It's trying to go towards the Shen. It's like a manifestation of the Shen. It's light. It needs to be grounded by the blood, which is stored by the liver. This upward movement is balanced by the downward movement of metal of the lungs. It's down pressing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, I'm with you.
yeah, so the Po, they're kind of pulling down, and so they're related to qi. That's what the lung does. It's to do with mastering the qi. Why are they 7? They relate them to the 7 orifices of the body.
Oh, eyes, ears, nose, mouth.
Yeah, because the
Okay.
Po is the thing that when you die, the opposite time to when you're born, wood, spring, all that kind of stuff. When you die, the Po is what has to leave the body in the correct manner. And if it doesn't, then it becomes a ghost, a gwei. It needs to attach itself to a body, and that's why they used to stopper the mouth and the anus, and because the anus is called Po men, the door of the Po.
Oh my, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
Right.
idea is that you're stoppering it so that it can stay within the body and then it can go into the ground with the bones. Because it's a much more physical, corporeal soul. That's what they call it. Corpo in Italian means body. Yeah. So we've got 7, 3 and 7. And 10, of course, it's completion, but it's completion on earth. So, 10 is like 1, really.
And we have the 10 heavenly stems.
That's right. Yeah. Heavenly, which have to do with space.
Well, when we start talking about time and space, it very quickly in my mind, because I grew up here in the West and, I've read the stuff I've read over the years. It very quickly makes me think about things like quantum physics and quantum mechanics and, all those really interesting writings by the, physicists of the early part of the last century. I mean, these guys lived, 100 years ago. I mean, we're just now beginning, I think, in our culture to see how some of what they were talking about actually makes sense. I mean, they talk about time and space in such a phenomenal way, and how, I mean, just the act of consciousness observing something in matter will change the fabric of the universe in a sense.
Yeah. Amazing. I agree.
And you agree. Do the stems and branches have something to say about that, or am I just trying to glue
No.
together two things that have nothing to do with each other?
Yeah, you're putting Western stuff onto Chinese stuff.
Okay, I'll just drop that then.
Get your Chinese mind on.
Yeah, well, I like putting my Chinese mind on. I find it's a helpful and useful thing to do so, because if I can look at things through my Chinese mind, I can see things that I can't see with my Western mind. The trick for me is being able to really put on my Chinese mind and gently lay aside my Western mind. Not that I get rid of it, but just like lay it aside and be able to, in some way, differentiate what is my Western mind, what's my Chinese mind, because there's always this guy in the middle that's going, look, I can hook this stuff up. But some stuff isn't meant to be hooked up, I suspect.
No, I think sometimes when you try and hook it up, you actually kind of just confuse things for yourself.
So I'm just going to put that on the shelf for the moment and come back to the creative and the created. It's evocative just to put those two terms together that way. It's very poetic. I'd like to hear more what you have to say about that, basically, in a way that can help us understand the work we do in our clinical practice. Is there some kind of clinical, I don't want to say application, but some way that understanding this dynamic of creative and created can help us in the work we do?
Really, what you're looking at is the more you can understand, or the more you can get your head around the way that Han Chinese thought about the cosmos and their place in the cosmos, the more you can understand the way that they wrote what they wrote. It doesn't seem to be so weird, if you want, but you do have to put your Chinese head on. If you think about it, these were people who were living outdoors as farmers. So they observed the sky and they observed the seasons. They looked at what happened over time, and they applied this to the body because they had the underlying understanding that the cosmos and the body were the same thing.
They did not see themselves separate from nature.
Absolutely not.
That's very hard for us.
Well, I think we're silly to think that we are separate from nature.
Well, I would agree with that, and certainly you look at the condition of the world, and that I think it's pretty obvious to those who have eyes to see it, and yet it's a very persistent illusion that I end at the edge of my skin.
I know. But actually, the more you look, the more you read, the only way to make any sense out of this is by understanding that what happens around you is actually what's happening inside you. And that is really fundamentally the basis of what they call stems and branches. Is just an understanding of, and you even see that in the Yellow Empress Classic. It talks about, to be a good doctor, you have to be a good astrologer and a good geographer, and then you'll be good at, working with the body. And what they're saying is you need to know about space, you need to know about time, and then you'll be good at what you do. That's all they're saying.
Makes sense as we're talking about it. Right? But I mean, you know how some things are, you don't quite have it, you hear something and you go, that makes sense. And then you actually try to say it yourself and you realize that you don't quite have it yet. Right? You've got like a glimmer, you've got a glimpse, maybe something that feels like a hunch. And now you got to go and kind of work at figuring it out. What does this really mean? How does it really work? How do I do this? I mean, to me, this is capital P practice.
It totally saddens me that that we have been sold this system that's called TCM, which is not traditional in any way whatsoever, and all the bits that are actually the understanding of how the Han Chinese viewed themselves within the cosmos has been excised from teaching of acupuncture. I'm constantly horrified. Like Michael, I'm sure you're a great practitioner, and I'm saddened by the fact that you didn't know there were 3 Hun.
I'm rather surprised that I didn't know
Yeah,
that there were 3 Hun. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
not?
Or 7 Po.
Yeah, precisely.
I get the number 5 though.
Great. Good. But do you know how 5 links to 6?
Tell me about it.
Well, again, here we go. So you're in heaven, you're in the womb. It's all to do with 5 and 10. And then you're born. Suddenly, your Jing Luo system starts. What's that based on? 6 and 12. It's the Liu Jing. And what do? They connect on the outside with the climates, and on the inside, 5 and 6. And they keep pulling the wool over our eyes. They keep saying, there's 5 Zhang and 6 Fu. But how can there be 12 Jing Luo? That doesn't make sense. And then they start talking this story about, oh yeah, there's Shinbao, and then there's the heart, and blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? So they don't stop talking about 5 and 6. It's just from start to finish. They keep saying, hey, 5, hey, 6, hey, 5, hey, what about 6?
But they're both interconnected. So you could talk about 5 or you could talk about 6, and it has more to do with where you're standing and what you're looking at than is 5 a reality or is 6 a reality? The answer is
They're both there.
yes, they're both realities.
Correct. But 5 has got a lot more to do with the way things move in the heavens, and 6 has got a lot more to do the way things move on Earth.
Okay. So 5 Zhang.
Yeah.
Because I just heard you say 5 has to do with heaven. So you're saying that the 5 Zhang are really about the influence of heaven within these viscera within our body?
Within the body, what do the Zhang do? What's their primary function? What do they do?
Well, traditionally we've been told they store the essence.
Right.
They store the clear. They're mainly about storage. And they're also considered more vital. It's like the Fu are considered second-class citizens in the world of organs. It's like you got the Zong, and the Zong are super important. In the Fu, expendable.
Yeah. So what about these, okay, so what does that tell you? Are they more heavenly compared to the Fu?
Well, again, I think it depends on where you stand and what you're thinking about. If you say heaven is more important than earth, then maybe you could make that argument.
I mean, when you're talking about heaven and earth, they're a duality. They're always in constant connection.
I would say that they're always in constant connection, and they are reflecting each other.
Yes, but when you look at the cosmogony, the way that the universe was formed from a Han Chinese or even earlier point of view, what happened? The light and the clear went up to heaven, and the dense and the impure collected downwards on earth. So you have anything that's pure is inherently more heavenly, and that's what the Zhang do. They store heavenly stuff. And then there's different manifestations of heavenly stuff because we're in the world of 5. So, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's still pure stuff, which is more heavenly.
I get that. I can follow that.
Good.
Yes. All right. And then we got our Fu.
Yeah.
Which is the expression of heaven in the earthly aspect.
Yeah, if you want. Why not? It's dealing with the outside. What the Fu are doing is they're protecting the Zhang, basically. And they're connecting with the outside. This is where you also get that story about the Liu Jing. They're connecting with the outside.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital qi. And that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
We have this sort of interior heaven, so to speak, in the Zhang. We have these conduits that connect that with I'm going to call it outer world, the outer environment.
The climates.
The climates. That's more the Fu. That's the realm of the Fu.
Yeah, to do with 6.
To do with 6. And of course, life comes from the interaction of these things.
Between the two. That's right. And incidentally, little side note, I said that they keep talking about 5 and 6. What about the story of the extraordinary Fu? Qi Jing.
So which extraordinary?
The extraordinary Fu.
Which ones are
There's 6 of them. Do you know about the extraordinary Fu?
Oh, man.
No. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, this is great. Tell me about the extraordinary Fu. I didn't know that we had extraordinary Fu.
Okay, so there's a chapter in the Suen. I'm sorry, I can't remember which one it is. Instead of saying there are 5 Zhang and 6 Fu, what it says is there are 5 Fu and 6 extraordinary Fu. And it says, well, what are these extraordinary Fu? It says, well, the extraordinary Fu, why are they called extraordinary? And you know already that there's got to be a hint because they use the word extraordinary, qi, like they use for the Qi Jing Ba Mai.
Right.
So, it's got something to do with Jing and before birth and all that kind of, pre-heavenly sort of stuff. Yeah. And then what does it say? Well, they're called extraordinary Fu because they look like Fu, but they store like Zhang.
Oh, you mean like the gallbladder?
The gallbladder is one of the extraordinary fu. It's the only one that is a normal fu and an extraordinary fu. The other ones are something like the brain, the bones, the marrow, the mai, and the uterus.
The uterus as an extraordinary fu. Okay. Wow. I'm going to have to go back and reread some of this stuff. I really appreciate the clue of how to look at this and approach it. And I think, to the credit of my teachers, I think I have heard this kind of thing before. But when I was first learning Chinese medicine, it was enough just to wrap my mind around like 12 channels and some acupuncture points, right? Getting into the kind of stuff we're talking about now, I had no bandwidth for it.
Yeah, I mean, our students, they work really hard.
You really torture them, don't you?
We do. But if they get to the end, they're pretty bloody good acupuncturists.
Well, it sounds like they have, no pun intended, but a rather extraordinary view of how things are put together and how they interact.
Yeah, I think they get a really good foundation.
I'm gonna have to figure out which chapter that is from the Su Wen, because that should go in the show notes page so people can check it out for themselves. We'll have to get that figured out.
That shouldn't be too hard. I think I can probably work it out quite quickly.
Great. You can send that to me.
I'll tell you later.
Great. So I wanted to talk about stems and branches, and it's taken us 50 minutes just to get to this point. we,
I'm so sorry.
we might have to come back and do a part 2. We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be
we'll
fun.
see.
So stems and branches, I want the beginning acupuncture lesson on stems and branches. I mean, I'd love to get into some more detailed stuff at another time, but right now, I would like to get sort of stems and branches 101. Talk to me like you talk to one of your beginning acupuncture students when it comes to stems and branches. What do I need to know? How can I start to think about it? And is there a way that I can begin to maybe not use it in clinic, but look to see how it arises in clinic?
I'm afraid I shock my students, especially right at the beginning. Luckily, they've seen me before, so they're not too shocked. But the first thing I do is I spend one whole day talking to them about space, and I talk about the planets, the visible planets, and I introduce the concept of the heavenly stems, which are all about the movements of the planets in the cosmos. And then the next day, which is usually a few days later, allowing them a little bit of time to get over their horrendous shock and brain strain, I spend another day talking about time and the branches and calendars and things like that. So stems and branches is if I had to give like an elevator pitch, which I'm not very good at, I'm afraid, I would say that it's what is behind 5 elements. It's where 5 elements actually came from. It's the foundations of 5 elements. And it allows you to use 5 elements in deeper and more effective ways than just the Sheng and the Ke cycle of 5 elements.
That sounds really enticing. I mean, it does. I mean, I remember reading in the Nanjing, and they talk about like the different types of control in the Ke cycle, right? There's like the control that's the kind of control you should have, and then there's the control that's like, super egregious control, and then there's like counterflow. I can't remember the names of all of them, but basically they're taking one phase and they're looking at control as coming from the other 4 phases. They each have a different kind of control that can be applied.
Yeah, that's right.
Some are more useful, some are super pathogenic.
Yeah, that's right. So these are different combinations if you want. So just like we know that liver and gallbladder, they go together in wood element, then for instance, in stems, we have an association between gallbladder and spleen. Or in branches, we have an association between gallbladder and heart. And so it allows us to use the organs or the channels with different ways of working, if you want.
So if you understand the relations of the stems and branches and how they relate to the organs
And the channels.
and the channels, it it really gives you another map for how to intervene depending on what you're seeing in clinic.
Yes, and those maps, there's more than one map, have got a lot to do with what we were talking about before, like the circular heaven and the creative and the created axis, or the square earth, and the idea of where you put the earth. Does it go in the center, or does it go between the seasons, or, all these are different maps, if you want, always around this. And you can look at these with relation to different levels of manifestation, or just to do with space, or just to do with time, or to do with your core, your inner being, as opposed to your personality, for instance, or to do with your parents as opposed to your children. There are so many different ways that you can use it.
Holy smokes. It leaves me a little speechless, and I usually have something to say.
Oh, that's great, Michael. I'm really pleased.
And I do want to get deeper into it.
I think you should come to England and do some studying.
Oh man. Okay, I'm going to go buy a plane ticket. Uh, I would like to. Okay, so for somebody that would like to learn more about this, I mean, do we have to come to your school and start over as a new acupuncture student? Do you have some kind of like continuing education stuff you do? Do I have to come hang with you in clinic for a month? I mean, what would it take to begin to learn the basic maps and then how to apply them?
We do have people who are acupuncturists who come and follow the third year Chinese medicine module, which is basically about stems and branches. The more I teach it, the more I realize that actually it would be a lot easier and a lot more helpful to teach this to people who are already graduates rather than people who are third year students, because it really feels like I'm trying to stuff an already full goose, to be honest. I can explain things much clearer, and I can see those glimmers of understanding much more with somebody who's been in practice for a while than for people who are still struggling.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, a few minutes ago, we were talking about the extraordinary foo, and I'm like, yeah, I'm drawing a blank on it. But actually, no, I didn't draw a blank on it. It's things that I'd heard about. I was completely unable to take that in because I was stuffed so full back in that time.
Yeah,
And I think it also is
exactly.
true that if we can take some basics and learn something about the basics, okay, I can kind of work my way around the wheel of the 5 phases. Hun, Po, Shun, maybe I've got kind of a sense of that after a few years of practice. So you work with these things, you get a little bit of comfort, you get some mental models that kind of work or you recognize where they don't. Then you're more ready to take another step like what I think you're talking about. I think it does make sense. It takes a kind of readiness. You have to be sort of cooked enough to be able to get that.
And also maybe bored with using the same points and getting stuck in those ruts that people do get stuck in. Because it is a bit like that. You're like, oh God, I don't know. I suppose I'll do spleen 6 then. It's like, really? So this is what I really, really love about teaching stems and branches, because I'm completely selfish in my teaching. I do this because it forces me to keep on rereading and thinking and applying. So I'm doing it for myself. I'm not really doing it for anybody else's benefit. And what I love about it is it's a little bit like being a vegan. If you're a vegan, people always say, oh my God, you can't eat this, you can't eat this, you can't eat this. What do you eat? But actually, restriction and, sort of forcing yourself to be, to think more, to use your mind, to really sort of concentrate and focus and try and find a way around it, causes you to be substantially much more creative.
Yes, absolutely.
And that, I love that. I love that. I don't want to be bored.
Yeah.
I hate being bored.
I understand. Well, and but I also this thing about that you're doing it selfish. I also want to suggest that there is the possibility that when we go deeply into something that we're curious about, because it somehow feeds us and then we take it and share it with other people, it's actually a very generous thing to do.
Maybe.
And
But,
very creative, super artistic, right? This is where art comes from.
all I know is that I love it. I find it completely fascinating, and I'm still studying it more and more and more. And the more I study, the more I learn, and the better my teaching gets. So,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. That's great. So, uh, we're gonna come back and do a part 2. I hope you'll agree to that. But before we wind this down, there's just a few other things that I'd like to ask you.
Okay.
What is sort of at the edge of your horizon? It's like, what's the thing at this moment in time that's really got your attention? You don't understand it, but you've got a hunch. It's got your attention. You're putting your study and your efforts toward it.
Currently, I'm actually reading and writing a chapter about iatromancy. It's a big word that means divination for medicine, medical divination. And that's actually a lot of what Stems and Branches is about, or originally what it was about, although not necessarily now. I've sort of really, really got into understanding more about ancient and medieval divinatory schemes.
In service of healing.
Exactly. Because there are chapters in the Huangdi Neijing that still incorporate some of these schemes. Because you know that the Huangdi Neijing is just a compilation of different things, and they put it all together, and then, different bits, some of them, you look at them, you think, what is that all about? So that's where I'm going.
Wasn't it originally titled The Idiot's Guide to Medicine?
I don't think it was. Head scratching moment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
If
And
those are idiots, how idiotic are we?
well, I mean, what I mean is we have these different guides these days. They call it the idiot's guide. I'm using idiot here in air quotes.
Yeah, I know what
But
you mean.
they're like simple guides to like how to get stuff done. Simple guide to fixing your car. Simple guide to, how to build a wall. Simple guide to how to heal your ulcers.
And chapters 1 to 5 of the Suen are the Idiot's Guide, along with chapter Suen 8. So, if you really want to get into that number thing, number 1, Suen 1 talks about the totality of your life. Chapter 2 talks about yin yang. Chapter 3 talks about things to do with 3. Chapter 4 talks about the seasons. And chapter 5 talks about the 5 phases or the 5 elements. Oh, chapter 6 talks about things to do with 6. Chapter 9 talks about things to do with 9. And chapter 8 is the one that talks about, the administration, the 12 officials, they call them in the Worsley School. So it's the numbers are inherent in the book. I'm not making this up. This
No,
is
no,
totally in there.
I hear you say it, and I think to myself, how come I didn't notice that? Because I hear you say it, and I go, uh huh, uh huh, uh huh. That makes sense. Okay, and of course, if you're doing numbers the way the Chinese love to do numbers, why wouldn't you write it that way? I mean,
Why wouldn't you?
yeah,
Why wouldn't they organize it in that way? It totally makes
totally
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Ooh, man, I'm gonna. This is the cool thing about the classics, right? You get a little glimpse, a little insight like this. You can go back and read it. It'll have something completely different to say.
That's right.
Yeah,
I know.
that's
It's
cool.
outrageous.
All right, one more thing, and then we'll wind it down for today. Two more things, actually, two. So the first one is, I mean, you've been at this for a while. How long have you been practicing?
20
Yeah,
years.
20 years. Okay, that's a while. A couple of decades. I know when we start out, we often have ideas about how things are, and then those modify over time, and those modify again over time, and those modify again over time. I'm curious to know what about our medicine you believe today that you didn't believe 5 years ago?
How to answer that? I believe that time moves in a cyclical fashion. It's a spiral. So you come back, but you're at a different level. So you keep on coming back. So you see the same thing, but in a different way or from a different angle. So for me, this has been a cyclical journey of exploration, and all that's happening is that I'm understanding my eyes are opening more and more. I do not feel that I'm ever going to learn enough. I think that I would need at least 10 lifetimes to be able to understand this properly. And I totally regret not having started this when I was much, much younger.
Yeah, but you know what? I think we always started exactly the right moment it was for us to start.
Mm, yeah, that's definitely
I
true.
think it's
And,
really
there
true.
were books that I had when I was 14, 15 that were still in the area of things that I then wrote my dissertation about and I'm still thinking about now. So obviously I'm stuck on that spiralic path around some particular thing that has something to do with numbers. That's all I can say.
That's great. It's super fun. Yeah. All right.
And with respect to practice, I don't
Yeah.
know. My patients keep coming back, so I guess I must be doing something right.
Yeah. Well, have you noticed that your patient load and sort of what characterizes the people that come to see you changes over time?
Definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. At the beginning, it was when I needed to learn about something, then I'd have a whole load of patients with that symptom area. Now it's not so much. Now it's more like, okay, I'm changing in the way that I practice, in my understanding, and I'm attracting much, much harder cases.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, you're up for the task now,
Yeah.
right?
I definitely couldn't have done that before.
Well, you were just talking about spirals,
Yeah.
right? And so you're another couple of turns on that spiral.
Yeah. Slowly, slowly.
But yeah, my lie. Um, do you have any advice for new practitioners? I mean, getting out of school, right? You're out of school, your mind's been blown for 3 years, you're stuffed full as a goose. And, how do you start I mean, do you have any advice for the new practitioner? Just like, if you could go
Stay
back and talk to
calm.
yourself 20 years ago, what would you say?
Go back to basics.
Mm,
Go back to basics. I know when I started, my head was so full of stuff. I felt that I would never understand anything. So I thought, okay, let's just make this really simple. Is it yin? Is it yang? Is it on the left? Is it on the right? Is it at the top? Is it at the bottom? What can I do about it? Literally that simple. That's it. And then go back over your notes, instead of just putting them aside and burning them like people do when they finish school. Oh, I'm going to burn my notes. Hooray. Then, go back over the bits, reread stuff. That's why I said about being very selfish is that I get the chance to reread my notes. I get the chance to go over it again. And every time I have a different level of understanding. That's amazing.
yeah.
It's a total gift.
Yeah. It's endless, and that's the gift and the curse.
Yeah.
I'm going to
But
call it gift though.
yeah, it's definitely a gift.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah. Great. Deborah, this has been wonderful. I'm sure I'm going to see number 5 in all kinds of other new ways, and
Everywhere.
yeah, and the 6 too, the 5 and the
And
6.
the 6.
Oh
Don't
boy.
forget the
All right.
6.
I'm watching for
And we
this.
need to know who the 6 is in Umbrella Academy
I'm
too.
trying to remember who that is.
Yeah,
Is it
who
is,
is
is
it?
it Vanya?
Maybe. No, I think she's 7.
No, I think she is 7.
Mm.
Maybe it's
But,
I'm going to have to go back and find out. All right, we'll put it in the show
kind of,
notes for you.
yeah, how cool.
Deborah, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It's been brilliant.
Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Geological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Geological.